Good morning, students. Welcome back to the session. In this session, we are going to discuss regarding the what is a process, what are the different relationships we had in a process, and what are the different states a process is going to reside. So these are the three things we are going to discuss in this today's class. So in this today's class, like when we are going to deal with the process, we have to know first the definition of a process. Fine. So what do you mean by a process? A process is nothing but a program in execution. That we call it as a process, is it not? So when we are telling that a program is in execution, that we call it as a process. So here, when we are seeing here, suppose if we are going to write a C program or a C++ program, okay? So when we are going to write a C program or a C++ program, so after writing the program, what you people will do? You people are going to compile the program, fine? After compilation, you need to execute the program. Till that compilation, you call it as a, like you call it as a program. So when you dumped that program onto the main memory, then we say that it is a process. So that is how difference is going to be occurring between the process and a program. I'll be showing you like suppose here when we are going to take some a program, suppose a program in the sense like a small program if you are taking, okay, suppose here you have written a program, so you have written a program, so this is in text format, fine, this program is in text format. So this we call it as a, when we are going to have this in text format, we will be going to say that it is a program. So you have to, what after writing the program, what you have to do? You have to compile the program. After compiling the program, you have to load that program onto the main memory. Why? Because until unless the program is loaded onto the main memory, the CPU can't execute the program. Is it not so? So here you have written a program which is in text format. After writing the program, you have to compile the program. So in order to compile, after compiling the program, you will be going to write that program onto the, that program into the main memory. So when we dump that program into the main memory, now we call it as a process. Fine. When we have dumped the program into main memory, when it has come into the main memory for execution, we call that it as a process. A program is nothing but, what a program is? A program is nothing but set of instructions. Fine. A program is nothing but set of instructions. So a program is going to be written in the text format. After writing a C or a C++ program, you need to compile that program. So after compiling, what you have to do? You have to load the program onto the main memory. Until unless the program has been loaded into the main memory, you can't, CPU can't execute the program. Fine. So what the thing it is going to do is, after dumping that program onto the main memory, now the program turns into process. So this is how we will be going to have the differentiation between the program and process. Fine. So process is a program that is being executed, and while a program is a collection of instructions. That is the difference between a process and a program. So in order to complete a process, in order to execute or in order to do a process requires certain amount of resources. What are the resources? Some hardware resources. So what are the resources it is in need of? Like it may be in need of some CPU time, like as the CPU is busy at that instant of time, it has to wait until the CPU gets free. So it needs some CPU time, it needs some memory in order to save the data, it needs some files in order to take the data, and it is going to have the, it is going to store in the kernel. It is going to have the operating systems in which you will be going to store the data. In the basic on these things, a process is going to be done. So a process is nothing but a program in execution. What do you mean by a program? A program is a set of instructions. So when the program has been loaded onto the main memory, then the program is converted into process. In order to do a process, in order to fulfill the task of a process, we need certain resources. Like it may be a hardware, it may be a like hardware resources, or it may be a CPU time, or it may be a printer, or it may be a scanner, whatever it may be, it needs some resources. So that we call it as a process. Here you can see when a program is loaded onto the main memory. So here when a program is loaded onto the main memory, then we call it as a process. So here a process has been divided into four different things. So what are the four different things you will be going to have in a process? In the sense, it is going to have, here I will be showing you the diagram, it is going to store into four parts. Fine. Here you will be going to have, first one is the stack. Here the first one you find is the stack, and second one you find is a heap, data, and finally the text. A process is going to be divided into four different parts. Okay. So here when it comes to the stack, a stack is nothing but which is going to store, here the stack is going to store the temporary data. Why the stack is going to be used? In the sense, this stack is going to store the temporary data. What do you mean by a temporary data? So the temporary data in the sense like functions, like whatever the thing we have written in a program, some functions, methods, etc. When we are going to do any program, we need some sort of functions, or we are going to call some methods. Those are going to be stored onto the stack. Fine. This is how the stack is the one of the important part of a process. A process has been divided into four parts. The first one is the stack. Stack is the one which is going to store the temporary data. Temporary data examples, in the sense like whatever in the program we are going to write some sort of functions, we are going to write some sort of methods. Those things we call it as a temporary data. And next one we are going to have the heap. So this heap we call it as a DMA. So DMA in the sense dynamic memory allocation. When we are doing a program, like at that instant of time we are going to allocate the memory. So heap is going for that dynamic memory allocation purpose. So when we are going to have to the data, this is used for storing the global variables and static variables. Fine. This data is going to be stored for storing the global variables and static variables. So this is the purpose of our data in a process. And finally you will be going to have the text. This includes the current activity. So what is the current activity we are going to have? That is going to be shown in this text. Fine. So these are the things you will be going to have in the current activity. So these are the things you will be going to have in the process. Also, when we are going to talk regarding a process is going to be divided into four important tasks. So what are the four important sections in the sense? The first one is the stack section, next one is the heap section, third one is the data section, and finally we'll be going to have the text section. So what is the stack purpose is? So in order to store the temporary data, we'll be going to have a stack. Stack like temporary data in the sense of functions, methods, all these things we'll be going to store in the stack. When it comes to the heap is nothing but it is used for a dynamic memory allocation. As we all know, dynamic memory allocation in the sense dynamically it is going to allocate the memory. So that details will be going to store in the heap. When it comes to the data, what are the variables we have used in our program? What are the static variables we have used in a program? And what are the dynamic variables we have used in our program? So all the things you will be going to store in the data section, and finally you will be going to have the text section. This text section includes the current activity represented by the processor. So what is the current task we are going to do? So that is going to be represented by the processor is going to be saved in the text section. So these are the things here we will be going to store in the stack, heap, data and text. So here the process stack contains a temporary data, like you will be going to have function parameters, what are the return addresses, what are the local variables, all will be going to store over here. When it comes to the heap, as I have said you, it is a dynamically allocated memory to a process during this runtime. A text includes the current activity represented by the process, like current activity in the sense, like we used to have a register called program counter, like what is the next thing you will be going to store, that is also going to be stored in the program counter. And finally the data section. In this data section we are going to have the static variables and the global variables. What are the static variables we have declared in our program, and what are the global variables that we have declared in our program? All the things are going to be stored onto the data section. And the next we'll be going to see regarding the relationships of a process. So what are the different process relationships? So what are the different process relationships in the sense? There will be majorly uh, two types of relationships we used to have. So what are the two types of particular relationships in the sense? The first one is the independent process and second one is the cooperating process. Independent process and the cooperating process. So what do you mean by an independent process? As the name itself indicates, independent means it is not depending on any other things. So independent process is the process that cannot affect or be affected by any of the process. Fine. It is not going to affect any process and it can't be affected by any other process. That we call it as an independent process. Independent process in the sense, these independent process don't share anything. They'll be not going to share the data, they'll be not going to share the resources, or they'll be not going to share the memory. So they'll be going to use for their purpose only. Independently they'll be going to work. So these processes does not share any data like temporary or persistent with any other process. Those processes we call it as an independent processes. And the next processes what we are having is the cooperating processes. Cooperating in the sense, like it is going to provide cooperation among the processes. Like these processes is affect or to be affected by the other processes. Why? Because independent in the sense it is not going to mingle with any other process. As the name itself indicates, cooperating process in the sense it has to cooperate with the other processes in order to share the resources or in order to share the memory. So whatever the thing may be, so it is sharing may be possible, like you will be going to share the resources, you will be going to share the memory, whatever the thing you will be going to have, that we comes under the cooperative process. These are the two different process relationships we are having. So independent relationships and the cooperating relationship. Independent in the sense it is not going to share any of the thing with the other processes. Cooperating process in the sense the resources, the memory, the CPU time, everything is going to be shared with the other processes. These are the two relationships that is going to present between the processes. Fine. And the next one is why we need a process cooperation. So process cooperation is very, very important. So why we need a process cooperation? Suppose, for example, take yourself. You are a single person. When you are preparing for your exams, you have what you have to do. You have to read the whole textbook. You have to read the whole notes. Everything you have to do by your own. So what is the drawback you will find at that time? You need much amount of time in order to read, in order to understand, and in order to complete your task. Is it not? So when you take the cooperation of your friend, when two or three friends are studying together for an exam, what you people will do is you will be going to share the topics among you people. Like first person is going to read 2 units, second person is going to read another 2 units, and the third one is going to have a last unit. So what you people are doing, you are sharing the content among your friends, so that whatever the content you have read, you will be sharing with your second friend. Whatever the content the second person has read, that content will be shared by your friend, the first person, like that. So why in the process also we need very much cooperation, fine. So the first and the foremost thing, when we are going to have a cooperation between the processes, in the sense, the first and the foremost thing is the information sharing. So information in sharing, in the sense, sharing of information. So sharing of information between whom? Between the processes. Sharing the information between the processes, we call it as an information sharing. Why? Because we can't say that only one process is there in the queue, or one process is there in the ready queue. We can't say like that. There will be many processes waiting for the CPU time. So if all the processes need to complete its task, the resources has to be shared among the processes. So several users may need to access the same piece of information, right? So suppose a printer is there. Suppose when we have a faculty, when we are going to use a printer, we are having one printer. So we have to use, every faculty will be using that printer. So there should be an environment such that it allows everyone to access the different types of resources. That is the information sharing. So this is the first and the foremost thing when we are talking regarding the process cooperation. So if process cooperation is there, then only the task will get complete soon. So in order to complete the task more earlier and more faster, what the things you have to do, in the sense, we have to share the information. So information sharing is one of the major important thing you will be going to have in the process. And next is the cooperating process. Cooperating process is like computation speed up. Next one is the computation speed up. So what do you mean by computation speed up? Means you have to complete the task as much early as possible. So in order to run the task to be faster, what you have to do, it should be divided into subtasks. Suppose when you are talking regarding this computation speed up, so this is one process which is going to have 100 instructions. So this is the process P1 which is going to have 100 instructions. Here 100 instructions are there. So computation speed up is going to be achieved. When we are going to achieve this computation speed up, in the sense, so when we have divided this process into subtasks, then only we will be going to achieve the computation speed up. That means in the first instruction you will be going to have 25 instructions. In the second part you will be going to have another 25. In the third part another 25 instructions, and in the fourth part another 25. All the 100 instructions are going to be divided into 25, 25, 25, 25. 4 parts. So what it will be going to do? All these can be executed in parallel in order to complete the given task. So that is the cooperation computation speed up. So each will be executing in parallel with the others. So speed can be achieved if the computer has multiple processing elements such as CPU or IO channels. This is how we will be going to increase the computational speed up of the processes. And next one is modularity. So what do you mean by modularity? Modularity means, as you all know, like dividing into modules. So this is one process, in the sense, one process has been divided into two. This is the module 1 and this is the module 2, or else this is the part 1 and this is the part 2. Parts also can be called as modules. Fine. Why we are going to divide it into modules? In the sense, suppose if we are having 100 instructions, these 100 instructions, in order to execute these 100 instructions, it is going to take some a particular much amount of time. So what we are going to do is, we'll be going to divide it into 50 instructions and another 50 instructions. If you are going to execute this 50 instructions, you can complete it faster. First thing is you can complete it faster. Another thing is like error detection is very much easy. Finding of error detection is very much easy, so that you can speed up the computation. So you can speed up the computation. So these are the three main advantage when you have divided into modules. So modularity means constructing a system in modular fashion by dividing the system function into separate processes or threads. A thread is nothing but a small part of a process. We call it as a thread. So that is the modularity. Next one is the convenience. So convenience in the sense concurrent execution of cooperating process requires mechanism that allow communicating process with each other and synchronizing their actions. Convenience in the sense when the processes are synchronizing, when the processes are cooperating and doing the task, then it is very much convenient in order to complete the task in a very much less amount of time. So these are the four things why we need the processes to be cooperating. If the process are cooperating, we can increase the convenience is going to be more, and the modularity is going to be done. The computation speed up is going to be high, and information sharing is also going to be possible when we are going to deal with the process cooperation. This is how why we need a processes to be cooperated. Fine. Next, the important thing is the important topic here in this process states is states of a process. So I'm telling that here a process, suppose here a process is there. So this is a process. So what are the different states a process can reside in? Fine. When a process executes, it passes through different states. These states may differ in different operating systems. Some operating systems we call it as a new. Some operating systems they call it as a new in the sense it is the job which is going to be admitted. So that we call it as a new process. So some they call it as a job queue, ready queue, job scheduler. So many things will be going to be calling by many terms. Fine. So when we are going to talk regarding a process, the terminology is going to be differ in different textbooks. Fine. Let us see here. I am telling you that a process is going to have 5 different states. The first one is a new state. New state in the sense we call it as a program. It is not a process. In the new state, we call it as a program. So when it becomes a process, when it enters into the main memory, then only it will be going to enter into the process. Fine. And next one is so here it is a program. A program is nothing but when we are going to program is also called as a job queue. So this program we call it as a new state is also called as the job queue. Job queue in the sense all the programs which wants the CPU time are admitted are placed in a new. So I'll be going to discuss with the diagram. And next one is the ready. Ready in the sense the program is ready for execution. Here in the ready state, you will be going to program has been converted into process. Here in this ready state, the program has been converted into process. And next one is running state in the sense it is going to be executed by the CPU. Waiting in the sense that process needs any sort of IO devices, it has to wait. That is the waiting state. And finally terminated or exit state. Terminated in the sense like printed. Forcibly we have terminated the process, or exit in the sense if the task has been completed, we will be going to have the exit state. So these are the 5 different states of a process. So this is the diagram showing this process states. So which is very very important. So they are majorly having a process states are five. The first one is the new state, second one is the ready state, third one is the running state, and fourth one is the waiting state, and fifth one is terminated state. So these are the processes we are having over here. Fine. These are the different processes we are having. So when we are going to talk regarding the new state is also called as a job pool. This we call it as a job pool. Job pool in the sense all the processes, all the, we can say it as all the programs which want CPU time, all the programs which want to execute by the CPU are admitted, are placed over here, are placed in the job pool. Fine. Job pool is nothing but the new state. New state in the sense when a program has been done, that is going to be kept in the new state. We call it as a job pool also. So when a program has been kept in this job pool, so here what we have to do, we have to place this one. Suppose here we are going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 processes. Fine. Here we are having 5 processes. Here it is in the first come first serve fashion. Which comes first, that is going to be executed. So here it is the first process. So first process, whenever the CPU is free, this first process is going to be admitted onto the given to the ready state. So this ready state is also called as ready queue. Fine. So ready queue in the sense these processes are residing in main memory. So ready queue in the sense these processes are residing in main memory. Here we have to say it as a process but not a program. Here we are going to say it as a program. Why? Because they are not admitted in the main memory. So we are going to say this as a program. When the process 1 has admitted in the main memory or in a ready queue, we call it as a process. Fine. From this ready queue, we will be going to give our process to the running state. So running state in the sense CPU execution state, we call it as a running state. So this in this running state, here the CPU is going to be executed, CPU will executed this process 1, and when this process 1 has completed without any abstractions in the middle, it will be taken as terminated. That means completed. So this is the procedure we will be going to say. Suppose when process 1 is executing, suppose when process 1 is executing in the CPU, so here when process 1 is executing in the CPU, it needs some IO device. IO device in the sense a process 1 needs a printer. So I'll be going to show you here clearly. So here we'll be going to have a new process. New is after new, we'll be going to have the ready. After this ready, we'll be going to have the running. After running, we'll be going to have the exit. Here in the middle, you will be going to have the waiting state. So this is the things we are going to have. Fine. So when all here we call it as a job pool. Job pool in the sense all the processes are placed over here. All the programs are placed. All the programs will reside in new memory. So after new memory, one by one we'll admit into the ready state. The ready state, when a program comes here, it becomes a process. Fine. If process want to execute by the CPU, it will be handovering to the running state. So here the CPU is going to execute the tasks. So when the task has completed successfully, it will be going to successful completion, it will be going to exit out. Suppose, if suppose here process 1 is there, fine, this process 1 is there, here process 1 is running in the CPU, here process 1 is running in the CPU, fine. So when the process 1 is running, suppose this process 1 needs some printer, printer in the sense IO device. So but the IO device, this printer here, suppose here we are having the printer, some X process is using this printer, some X process is using, here the printer is busy now. So now this process P1 needs the printer, but what the here is, the printer is busy. So what the CPU will do is, this CPU will give this process, will keep the process 1 in the waiting state. So here the process 1 will be terminated. And again, what is the process? Another process is there. Second process is waiting in the ready queue, and this second process is now going to be executed by the CPU. So here this first process is going to be waiting, coming in the waiting state. So whenever this printer has become free, so as it is free, the OS will say that the operating system will be having an idea that the printer is free now. Again, what the OS will do is, it will admit the process 1 onto the ready state again. So it will delete the process here in the waiting state and admit in the ready state. So whenever the process 2 has successfully completed and exited out, so here again the process 1 will come and the process 1 will execute in the CPU, and after completion of this, it will be going to make use of a printer. After completing this, it will be exiting out of the process. So this is how the scheduling is going to be done. Fine. So here we will be going to have 3 different schedulers. The first one is long-term scheduler, second one is short-term scheduler, and the third one is medium-term scheduler. Fine. So what do you mean by a long-term, short-term and medium-term scheduling algorithms? Fine. So when it comes to the long-term scheduler, we also call it as job scheduler. Long-term scheduler is also called as a job scheduler. Short-term scheduler, we also call it as a CPU scheduler, and medium-term scheduler, we call it as a swapping. Fine. Long-term scheduler, short-term scheduler, and the medium-term scheduler. So when it comes to the medium-term scheduling, it is the swapping. So what it will be going to do is, it reduces the degree of multiprogramming. So medium-term scheduler reduces the degree of multiprogramming. So this medium-term scheduler is the in charge for handling the swapped in and swapped out processes. So that is the medium-term scheduler. So it is responsible for swapped in and swapped out processes. That is the medium-term scheduler. So when it comes to the short-term scheduler, as I have said you that it is a CPU scheduler. We call it as the CPU scheduler. So here the main objective is to increase the system performance. So that is the main objective of the CPU scheduler, and it is the change from ready state to the running state. Here when we are going to see in the diagram, so from ready state to the running state, So from ready state to the running state, we call it as a short term scheduler, and from new state to and from new state to ready state, we call it as a long term scheduler. Fine. And medium term scheduler, we call it as a swapping. Fine. So when we are going to take the process from new state to the ready state, we call it as a long term scheduler, and we are taking the processes from ready state to running state, we call it as a short term scheduler. So this short term scheduler, we call it as a CPU scheduler. What is the thing is, it is going to increase the system performance. Fine. It is going to increase the system performance. When it comes to the long term scheduler, all the programs are admitted in the system for processing, right? So it selects the process from queue. So what the long term scheduler will do is selects process from queue. So this is the task of the long term scheduler, and loads them into the main memory for execution. So that is the basic thing of long term scheduler. Selects a process from queue and loads into main memory. For what? For execution. So this is how the long term scheduler, short term scheduler and medium term scheduler are going to happen. See here, once I'm repeating, we are having 5 states. Fine. We are having majorly 5 states of a processes. So what are the 5 different states in the sense? New state, ready state, running state, exit state and waiting state. New in the sense all the programs are going to be placed in the new state. We call it as a job pool. And if we want, and here the long term scheduler is one which is going to select the process from this queue and loads into the main memory for execution. So this is the long term scheduler which is going to select from new state to ready state is the long term scheduler, which is going to select the process from new state and loads into the main memory for execution. So that is the long term scheduler. Here the program becomes a process. As it is loaded into the main memory, the program becomes a process, and from the ready queue we need to go to the running state. So which will take from ready state to running state is the short term scheduler. This short term scheduler is used to increase the performance of the system. When the process is there in the running state, and it will be going to be executed by the CPU, and after completing successfully, it will be going to the exit state. Suppose if it requires any IO device, so it is IO waiting. If he is going for the IO waiting, we will be going to make in the waiting state. When the IO device is ready, again we will admit this process into the ready state. So these are the different states of a process, and these are the different schedulers. 5 states in the sense: new state, ready state, running state, exit state and the waiting state. What are the 3 different schedulers? Schedulers in the sense, first one is long term scheduler, second one is short term scheduler, and third one is medium term scheduler. This medium term scheduler is used for swapping purposes, and short term is used for increasing the performance of the system, and long term scheduling is used for selecting the processes from the new state and loading it to the main memory for execution. This is how the different states of a process are going to be executed. Fine. So these are the different states. So here you can see a new state means a process that has just been created. Ready in the sense process are waiting to have a process allocated by the operating system. Running in the sense which is currently being executed. Waiting in the sense a process has to wait until it needs an IO device or completion on an IO device. Terminate in the sense a process that has been released from the pool of executable processes by the operating system. So this is how we'll be going to have the different states of a process. So this is how we will be going to deal with the process. And there are many things to learn in this process. Next comes the process management. So that process management is very, very important. How you are managing the processes and what are the different concepts we are going to utilize in order to manage the processes. All the things we'll be going to see in the process management. So that's all for today. And students, we'll be going to see you in the next class. Thank you all. Have a nice day.